that messes up sometimes. Hello, welcome to Lawyers Who Stream. Noelle Sorrell, our first official guest since I was explaining to everyone how that pilot episode with Gertag unfortunately is now lost to time because I forgot to hit record.
That's all right,
So apologies to him.
apologies to him, but like it's great for me if this really takes off. I can lay claim to being the
That's
first.
right, you can stick your flag in the ground. You can say, I was first, there's record of it.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Apologies for my late arrival. I had to have my Mariah Carey diva moment and, get all prettied up and go to a salon, whole thing. Just all for you, Teddy. All for you.
me and our audience, let's be fair. This is just
It's
for
true.
me.
That's
Yeah.
true. You
Hmm.
and the beautiful people watching.
Yes, and we have many beautiful people in the chat. You have your self-proclaimed BFF in the chat. Andrew is
Oh,
here.
I was gonna ask
Uh,
which one, but I'm glad.
mhm.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we got Andrew. We got Carly, who I already announced is going to be our guest next week. We got Carly and
Oh,
Zach coming next
excellent.
week. Yep. Hmm.
Of course, they're a pair. They have to come together. You
They have to
can't
come
have
together.
Carly without Zach.
No, no, impossible. So we'll get to test my three-person interview setup, which will be interesting. Yes. So hi, welcome to Lawyers Who Stream. How's it going? How was your day?
It was good. We just came off having a couple trial days in a row. So
Mm,
today was really nice and relaxing, and just one of those days where you're in the office and you just get things organized.
yep.
So that was delightful. And then I got my hair done, which was great because we've been in lockdown. So honestly, I've had a pretty solid day. How about you?
Pretty good day, pretty productive, except for the 2 hours I took in the middle of the day to just sit out in the sun and, absorb UV rays for a little while. I think that was needed.
I went for a little walk on my lunchtime and so worth it. It was gorgeous today. Apparently, it's supposed to rain now. There's some sort of southwestern Ontario thunderstorm rain warning, but I enjoyed
Yeah,
it while it lasted.
me too. Gotta take advantage. So yeah, how about we just get into it? So you are a paralegal, as we all
I
know.
am.
Why
Yes.
don't you tell us a little bit about your education background and how you got into this line of work?
Yeah, so I feel like I kind of got here in sort of like a twisty, windabouty kind of way. I'm from Windsor originally,
Hmm.
and that's where I am currently.
Hmm.
And then I moved to Toronto to do my undergraduate degree at Ryerson University. I started with in IT and then realized I was really bad at that and switched about three quarters of the way through one degree to switch to law and business with a minor in IT.
Mm, very
Um,
cool.
no meaningful choice between law and business. It was just the one that would take most of my credits, honestly. And I was like, oh, I don't want to start a new degree from scratch. They'll take most of it. That works. And then, like everyone who wants to go to law school, I applied right, or most people, I guess, I applied right out of university, and they were like, no, not you. So I was a little upset about that for a while, and I spent some time. I don't know. I would say kind of disengaged with law. I wasn't
Mm,
really doing anything in the legal community. I wasn't looking for legal context. I wasn't really involved in any way. I my background of work is all retail. I worked at Shoppers Drug Mart for 10 years.
yeah.
When I moved back to Windsor, I helped a friend start up an escape room business. So I was designing escape rooms, which was awesome, and
Hmm.
managing escape rooms. And I did that for 3.5 years after graduating
Wow.
university. And I loved it. I was pretty content with it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got bit by okay, well, like law was still kind of always there in the back of my mind. I was like, well, I don't know if I can give up on it just yet.
Mm,
So I applied to the paralegal program at St. Clair College, thinking, this is kind of an easy way for me to not like test the waters, see how I feel about taking law courses, see how I feel about law, see if I kind of have that connection again.
hmm.
And immediately was back in love with it. And I was like, okay, you know what? This was the right choice for me.
That's awesome.
Uh, yeah. And so went through with that, graduated. I don't know. The panorama has killed my sense of time 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that.
Mm,
And now I'm here on
yeah.
this show.
Amazing. Yeah, I didn't know that you were sort of determined to do law even before you did all the escape room stuff and coming out of undergrad.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was it was kind of like the lifelong kind of goal for me was to end up in law.
Mhm.
When I was younger, I thought that meant I would be solving murder mysteries because I didn't really know what a lawyer was. So I was very convinced I was going to be some sort of private investigator or a detective.
Interesting.
And then I got my adult brains, and I realized that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do.
Mm,
So yeah, it's kind of always been what I wanted to do. Um, I kind of had a period of, I guess, disillusionment when I didn't get in, and I was like, well, maybe it's just not for me.
yeah,
Kind of. They don't really talk about alternative ways to get into law. It's not.
for sure. Hmm.
It's not broadly spoken about. So I wasn't even really sure what else. I was like, well, if I can't be a lawyer, then what am I gonna do? You know?
Yeah, it's unfortunately the nature of the profession that yeah, they sort of make it this one path, and even when they're in law school, it's very much this
Hmm.
one path. We talked about this a little bit last week,
Yeah.
where it seems like there's only one way to do law, one sort of structure in place, when that's not the case at all. And like you said, even not going to law school, you have found your way into law. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your practice right now?
Yeah, so I like to joke that I kind of like backdoored my way in because it's kind of what I feel like I did. So I graduated from the paralegal program, and I was super lucky because I got a job right after graduation as a legal assistant at a personal injury firm.
Hmm.
And so that was even before I had my license. I think I was 2 months away from writing my exam. So I just graduated the program and they took me, which was awesome.
Hmm.
And that was my first time ever working in an office setting because again, all of my background was retail prior to that.
Yeah.
First time working in law, first time working in an office setting, a lot of changes all at once. I was with that personal injury firm for about 10 months or so, um, until I moved to the last personal injury firm that I was in. Just the personal injury for those who know personal injury, and I know Carly does for sure. There's kind of like two components usually in a firm. There's the tort side and the accident benefit side.
Hmm.
And the firm that I was first at kind of split their assistance into tort and accident benefits, and never the two shall meet.
Hmm.
And I was kind of bored with that. I wanted to be able to learn more of what I was doing because it never felt like I was getting the full picture of any file I was working on because there was like this whole aspect of it I just didn't understand. And so the firm that I moved to, I knew I would be the assistant for both tort and accident benefits on all files. So I was like, that's way better for me. I was kind of already bored of just little bit I was doing. So then I moved to that firm,
Hmm.
and then the Pandora hit, and there's a little bit of an hour cut across the board for everyone.
Yeah,
I know I'm not the only one in the profession who's had to deal with that.
definitely.
But very fortunately, the lawyer that I am now working for full time, Bobby Russin, was like, hey, I'm in a really busy period right now. And even if you can just come one day a week, it'll help make up the hours that you lost at your firm. And it would be a really big help to me. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you know what? Perfect. Win win. And then, I had already known him from prior because I was lucky enough to do my paralegal placement with him, similar to articling, but less
Yeah.
time involved, and also unpaid. Whole other rant.
How long is a placement?
It is a couple of months, so it's not a full. I don't remember specifically because it's not like as drilled in, but it was a couple of months unpaid because they are mandatorily unpaid.
Mandatorily unpaid. And that's
Yeah.
I guess that's part of your education, right? When you're
Yep.
still enrolled
Yep.
at school? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I had known him from then, which is how I had kind of made this connection once my hours were cut.
Yep.
And then we still worked really well together, and everything kind of just fell into place. And he was like, hey, you know what? I'm at a point with my practice now where I need someone full time. And so criminal defense and having a paralegal just works so well because a lot of our bread and butter is like provincial offenses and highway traffic act and stuff that
Mm,
he is naturally coming to him anyways.
yeah.
And so that is currently where my practice is. I work full time for him as a paralegal slash assistant. And then in my spare time with kind of my side practice, I kind of do more of that work, but also a little bit of small claims, kind of personal injury related stuff as well, because I've sort
Mhm.
of taken that knowledge and was like, well, I can use it here too now.
So you've mentioned a few things now. You've mentioned tort law. You've mentioned accident benefits,
Yeah.
and torts. For those who don't know, is like it's a civil procedure. You sue someone for damages incurred to you, either deliberately or negligently, and you try and get some money out of them to get compensated. And accident benefits is very much caught up in this sort of Ontario insurance scheme world.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that. You mentioned your criminal practice as well. So in Ontario. What can a paralegal do and what can't they do, sort of broadly speaking?
Yeah, so in the broad sense, we can do any summary criminal offenses, anything that's like super summary or proceeding by indictment, we can't do.
Hmm.
We can do pretty much any tribunal under the sun, you name it, we can appear there. Small claims court, land and tenant board, those are all kind of our bread and butter. Provincial offenses, anything under that we can do.
Hmm.
What we can't do is probably easier to narrow down. We can't do family law yet, though there are currently talks right now with the LSO and convocation to maybe allow for a specialized family law license for paralegals.
Hmm.
We can't do real estate transactions, so can't do that. And that's like the big two that we can't do really is real estate and family law. And then kind of in every other area, there is something that we can do. Maybe
Right.
not at the full scope. I can't run a murder trial, but it's that's kind of where we're at. And Ontario, for those who don't know, Ontario is the only province that has licensed paralegals that work sort of as smaller scope lawyers. None of the other provinces recognize paralegals in the same way that Ontario does.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So this is an Ontario only thing. It was created because the demand for more accessible legal services is so high in Ontario.
absolutely.
Some other provinces I know have been kind of discussing that sort of switch, but we are the only ones licensed and regulated by a law society, and we are the only ones who are allowed to practice law on our own without supervision of a lawyer.
Hmm. And you mentioned that while you're working for Bobby, you also kind of have your own practice going,
Hmm.
sort of on the side. So
Yeah.
are you officially sort of in chambers with him in that case?
I guess so. The way I kind of look at it is all of his work comes first, because primarily when I'm there, I'm his paralegal, I'm his assistant.
Hmm.
A lot of my stuff comes on my own time.
Right.
Um, but if I'm in situations where, I needed to have a client meet me or, I needed a day to appear in court, he is incredibly flexible with me.
Hmm.
As long as things are running smoothly for him, which they are. I hesitate to say I'm in chambers because it's more like a very flexible working agreement where uh, he allows me to do my own thing so long as his stuff also gets done.
That seems very agreeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so when you switched practice areas into criminal, did you know sort of off the bat when you were training to be a paralegal that you wanted to do criminal, or was this something that just kind of came up as a happy accident?
Oh no, criminal was like always my thing. Going back to wanting to solve murder mysteries, but realizing that's not a real job. Always my thing. Personal injury was just, when you graduate, you just take a job and you're like, any experience can get me where I want to be, right?
Totally,
So
yeah.
I wasn't being really picky, especially the job market with the way it is in Windsor is legal assistant positions don't come up super often here. It is very, very rare. It's not a super big city, and a lot of legal assistants stay at their firms for a long time.
Hmm.
So it was exciting to see anything be posted ever at all.
Mm,
I was like, oh man, an opening. I've been looking for 4 months, and this is the first one I've seen. So I wasn't being super picky. So I always kind of just viewed my jobs before as getting that experience and getting that knowledge to know that when something else did come up, I would at least be a candidate because I had experience. So
yeah.
it was kind of my stepping stone into where I wanted to be.
So it's a bit of a tough legal market in for assistants and paralegals in Windsor, I guess, eh?
It is.
Mm,
I always tell people who are coming into the paralegal program now here that if you really want to be a paralegal in Windsor specifically, you have to be willing to start your own business.
mm,
Firms in Windsor do not hire paralegals in the same capacity that firms in the GTA or do, where they will hire paralegals and those paralegals will work as paralegals.
mm,
Here we a lot of times end up being essentially law clerks. They don't really hire paralegals to do paralegal work here. I'm actually very lucky that I am in a situation where I have a boss that does hire me to do paralegal work.
Yeah.
Um, so in this market, you basically have to be willing to start your own business and hope for the best, which is tough even when we're not in a pandemic,
Mm,
but is even harder when, not everyone has the resources to do that. So
yeah,
in
for sure.
in the bigger cities though, like if people are willing to relocate, I think very lucrative career. Like I see some of the postings up in the GTA and I get a little envious.
Yeah, I think most of the major criminal law firms at one point, in late law school and getting into arguing, I was looking at a lot of criminal law firms to possibly work at, and I think just about every defense firm had at least two or three paralegals working
Yep.
for them as paralegals in that capacity. It just became naturally sort of part of their practice.
Yep.
And like you said, demand is so high here in the GTA for those accessible services. The overhead on paying for legal services is so high. I mean, legal services from a lawyer is so high that
Yep.
there's sort of a big market for it. Um, yeah.
Yep, I completely agree. Yeah, especially because, up there, especially in criminal defense side, like a lot of what we do in criminal defense are Highway Traffic Act and other sort of provincial offense related things. And that's I hesitate to use the word easy money because there is skill and knowledge involved in knowing how to advocate for your client, but those are not proceedings that generally take a long time. You can get things through um, provincial offenses pretty quick. So it allows paralegals to take on quite a few clients, especially under the support of the firm, because the process is designed to be quick, right? So
Hmm.
it's I can see why it's lucrative up there.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that paralegals are in Ontario, sort of a unique relationship with the Law Society of Ontario. What is your relationship with the Law Society of Ontario in terms of fees, reporting? Is it a similar process to what we go through, or
Yeah, so I pay annual fees. I believe not as much as the lawyers do. I want to say mine are like
I think
half
it
of
was
what
like
a junior
half that
call,
we said, yeah,
half of a junior call, yeah.
yeah.
I pay licensing fees. I have to do my annual report, same as everyone else. I think reporting on trust accounts, all of that fun stuff.
Hmm.
I'm also required to carry insurance if I want to have an active license. Interestingly enough, we do not go through Law Pro. That is a lawyers only thing.
Oh.
Paralegals have to shop for their insurance, which
Hmm.
I quite liked because it meant I wasn't only shifted into one and I could shop for rates that I liked. But that was a fun thing to learn when I graduated was that it wasn't Law Pro.
Yeah, I would have
Yeah.
assumed it was just Law Pro. We don't have a choice. It's sort of been monopolized by by Law
It's
Pro.
Law Pro or bust. I had
Hmm.
options. I was like comparing rates, had spreadsheets going. It was a whole thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I pay insurance. We are overseen the same way as lawyers are by the Law Society.
Hmm.
There's no difference other than I guess slightly less fees, but considering our scope isn't as great, it makes sense.
And then is there do paralegals get any kind of representation in convocation
We
or?
have 5 benchers at convocation.
Mhm.
We actually just elected the first paralegal bencher outside of the GTA
Wow.
was it last year for that bencher election was, or 2 years now?
I'm trying to remember exactly. It's a bit of a blur because now I'm like
Whenever that
because
last
now I'm
election was.
thinking, did that election happen pre-pandemic or during the pandemic? And I
It was
honestly couldn't tell you.
pre-pandemic for sure.
Okay, so
2 year.
2020, yeah, 2019. Anyhow,
Whenever that
whenever it
was.
was, this person got elected
Yes,
outside the
from
TA.
Windsor actually, which was
Oh,
very exciting for us.
fabulous. Mhm.
We campaigned hard for her. Yeah, so we get 5 benchers, so that's our representation at convocation. Um, it's small, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's we used to have none, and now we
Hmm.
have 5. So take the wins where we can get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you had the LSO's attention, convocation's attention for a few minutes, what do you think that you would say to kind of help out paralegals in the
That's a
province?
spicy question. I Hmm. I think the family law license is a great idea. I
Hmm.
would tell convocation that. One of the things that I've been hearing from people who are currently against it is that the education paralegals have right now currently doesn't support it, and I agree.
Hmm.
However, that can be changed. It's not like the
Easily. Yep.
curriculum is static or set in stone. And no one comes out of school knowing everything about every area of
I,
law.
I
Yeah.
would say if that's the argument that paralegal education doesn't support it, well, guess what? Lawyer education does not cover about 90% of what you need to know as a lawyer. So
Which
I
is what
find
I
that a bit
keep
unconvincing.
I know, I keep saying that. I'm like, "Did you know everything your first year of practice? Probably not. You probably had, so, figured out like the rest of us." I think that would be my number one thing to say convocation.
Hmm.
And in a general note, just not necessarily helping paralegals. I would hope that convocation would acknowledge that um, the there are a lot of new, younger, up and coming people in the profession,
Hmm.
and we are not necessarily happy with the traditional way that the Law Society has been governing. And a lot of people have some what would seem like radical, but aren't actually all that radical ideas to modernize the way the Law Society governs. And I would hope that they would be more willing to listen going forward, because I think change is coming, and whether or not they want to be on board with that or not, time will tell. But I think it's inevitable.
I think so too. I think that with, like I said, with the younger generation of lawyers, things are going to change just kind of naturally over time. And but also the Ontario bar is just fundamentally a very conservative bar. We say
It
Ontario is
is.
a very liberal province, however, the bar is very conservative, and yeah, and even colleagues of mine, people in my graduating year, who went to Windsor, who graduated same time as me, same age as me, they still are happy with the old ways of doing things because it works for them fundamentally. So they can't just be a passive process. I think there really needs to be a push for change within the LSO.
I think that's been like one of the hardest things to personally reconcile with some days is, you have an idea of how conservative things could be, but then you get in the profession and you realize that, oh, it was actually more than I thought. And I don't want to use conservative as a dirty word, but I'm being polite. We'll say that. Um, and it's really, it can be really tiring some days when you feel like you're always putting yourself out there to kind of fight for progressive views. And I have certainly been on the receiving end of some not so kind comments from
Hmm.
some esteemed colleagues.
I've seen a few.
And
Yep.
yeah, and so that can be really tiring. And it can be really discouraging. But at the same time, there are so many incredible people who are doing such creative and wonderful things, just entering the profession, not even
Yeah.
licensed yet. And that is inspiring. That's the stuff where I'm like, okay, you know what? It can be hard, but stick it out.
Absolutely. Um, Comment from Andrew: the legal profession hates change. That's why we self-regulate. Yep, I'd say
Yep.
so. I'd say that's the bargain.
Yep.
They let us
Spot on.
self-regulate so it could keep things more or less static. And yeah, I think I agree that you shouldn't use conservative as a dirty word necessarily. However, resistant to change is definitely when things are clearly not working for a large number of constituents and you are resistant to that change. I think that is fundamentally problematic. You have to recognize at some point that with the evolution, and we're seeing it right now in the COVID-19 pandemic, rapid changes occurring with the digitization of courts. I will admit that Doug Downey is doing a pretty impressive job
I
with that
agree,
stuff. Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Billing practice directions notwithstanding from the courts, but that's just how it's going to be. But yeah, things like phasing out faxes. I mean, we were still using faxes in 2020. Like,
I know. I've had to explain that to friends who are outside of law, and they don't believe me. They're like, "Can't you just send it as an email?" I'm like, "Well, I could, but their email signature says they don't accept electronic service, so now I have to fax
yep. And then there
it."
are rules about what's allowed, and
Mm,
technically a whole set.
mhm.
It's a whole
Whole
thing.
thing.
It's a whole
Yep.
thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, I don't even know how to use a fax. Yeah. Well, last time I used a fax machine, okay, I definitely used them at community legal aid. Uh, but before that, in a work environment, it was actually at my grandfather's engineering firm where I was at there for a summer, just helping him out, and I was sending faxes there.
I used one today. today
Wow.
because I had to fax Windsor Police. It's like, can I not just send this as an email? Do they not just have like a Dropbox email where I can like send a simple client change of address to? Nope, I
Nope.
have to fax it. Okay.
So do hospitals. Yeah, no, it's true. Hospitals still use
Yeah,
faxes, and there are reasons for it, I guess, for security and whatnot. But there's also ways around that electronically.
I agree.
Um, if anyone has questions for Noel, you could drop it in the chat now. We're still gonna stick around until we run out of things to talk about, basically tonight, even though we
Yeah,
started a
yeah.
little late.
Yes, my apologies again.
Your hair looks good.
Thank you. We're kind of discovering the color together as it dries because I ran out of the salon with my hair wet because I was like, I have to go. I'm so sorry. Goodbye. And I was like kind of in the car ride home with the hot air like blasting and just kind of occasionally trying to,
Hmm.
so we're learning about the color together. I'm liking it. It's good.
Yeah, it's a bit reddish.
Yeah.
Pretty good
There's
purple hue, but definitely
there's
would
gonna
say red when it came in. Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah. I think maybe that's part of the partially my awful yellow lighting as well. I'm interested to see what it looks like in like more natural light because in it's it's purpley.
Hmm.
We'll see.
Oh, you did mention a pretty intense trial that you went through recently. What was kind of your role? Do you want to talk about that? Talk about your role when
Yeah,
supporting
sure. I
Bobby
can
at a
I
trial?
can talk about it in a vague sense. I don't
Yeah,
mind at
of
all.
course, no details, but mhm,
So obviously Bobby runs them. That is, they are outside of my scope. I am not permitted to speak. However, on the back end, I do a lot of like heavy note taking, especially when he is doing direct and cross because he tends to stop taking notes during that point. Obviously, he's involved in examining people. So I'm pretty heavy note taking. And then anytime we have a break for him, me, a break, is us sitting together and coming up with, the legal strategy that we think we should take going forward.
mm,
I am incredibly grateful that he involves me in those conversations and he actually takes what I have to say into consideration, which was terrifying at first and still is. He kind of ends up using me as a sounding board, and we kind of work through any perceivable issues that we have together. And because I should back it up, I prep with him, so I already know going in, what kind of the relevant law we're looking for is, what we're hoping to get out of witnesses, any given witness,
mhm,
and I know what areas he wants to hit in direct and what areas he wants to hit in cross. So I essentially kind of dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure that we have gotten something for all of those areas. Or maybe if I don't think we've covered something enough, I'll be like, hey, the answer about this was a little wishy washy. Try to circle back to it if you can.
mhm.
So notes and strategy really, and then prep beforehand is kind of where I come in.
Awesome.
Um, all the heavy lifting is done by him. I just make sure I'm like the cleanup crew. I just make sure nothing was missed.
Which, in a trial can be essential. Like, don't want to miss anything. Mhm.
Yeah, and it gets so hectic,
Yeah.
and the days are so long. I think just for him having someone else to take notes with him is a huge stress off his shoulders because then he can just focus on, doing a cross, and the rhythm in cross is so important, and keeping that going and not have to worry about like taking a second to jot it down because he knows I've already gotten it. So
Hmm.
that tends to be my role, which for me is great.
Yeah.
I get to learn so much this way, and he's incredibly gracious with his time. So I know he says I help him, but really I'm excited to be there. I'm like, yay, thumbs up, that went well.
Yeah. Very heavy involvement, and that's a really awesome experience too. Question from Andrew: what are some of the benefits of working in a smaller city like Windsor compared to Toronto?
The legal community being smaller is both a blessing and a curse. Everyone knows each other, which is really lovely, and word kind of spreads fast if you're doing a good job. Like people are like,
Mm,
"Oh, you're Bobby's assistant." It kind of, I do love that. I'm excited for when the Pandora is done and I can like see people in court again and like personally introduce myself to them. So I really love like the support of a small city. Everyone's kind of rooting for each other,
yeah.
and at least I can speak to the criminal bar. I never feel like anyone's really competing with each other, even though we're all kind of competing with each other. Like everyone is so willing to support each other with their time and their knowledge, and anyone's just a phone call away if you have a question. And
Yeah.
I know you kind of get your own resources like that in a in a bigger city as well. Like you find your community, but just feeling like all of the criminal bars in it together in my
Hmm.
city, like that's kind of cool.
I,
And I don't
I
know that you would get that in a bigger city.
I do remember the collegiality of Windsor, the Windsor Defense Bar in particular, definitely stood out to me while I was going to school there, and doing my thing at the clinic. Feel like I knew most people by face, a lot of people by name by the end of
Yep.
it, and everyone was super friendly, super ready to help out. And yeah, that was just the vibe I got from talking to you, talking to other criminal lawyers in the city. That there are massive benefits of having a small bar like that.
Even like the lawyers and chambers, with us at the office, some of them I don't see very often, but like one of the most senior lawyers in the office came up to me today and was like, "How was your birthday?" We barely talk. We maybe share like one or two
Happy
words.
birthday, by the way.
Yeah, like it was oh, thank you. It was a little belated, but I'll let us I know. Um and I was just really nice. Like he didn't have to do that. We barely talk, maybe like occasional good mornings here and there, but he went out of his way and we had a full conversation about, what I did for my birthday. And so just
Awesome.
like the little things like that, I always feel like everyone is willing to make the effort to say hello and willing them to make the effort to get to know you in the little moments that they can, and I don't know that you necessarily get that in a large city like Toronto.
Yeah. In Toronto, like so many other things, I've obviously lived here most of my life, but yeah, it's you have to really work to find your community. It's not just there for you.
Yeah,
There's going to be cliques, there's going to be niches, there's going to be people you can find, and you can find just about everyone.
of
Just about
course, yeah.
anything and any topic that you need to learn more about, any practice area you want to do. There are people there here, but you got to find them, and that can be a bit daunting if you're not a particularly social person.
Yeah, or if you don't like if you're not like if you don't come from someone who's already in the profession,
Yeah,
right?
just
Like
a
if
foot
you're
in the
the first
door.
of your family and you're the one trying to make those connections for yourself in a big city, I
Hmm.
can imagine that is incredibly frightening task.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gonna wrap up in a few minutes, but before you go, something that I just thought about as we were speaking here. So someone who was, say there's someone in your situation who really wants to get into law, but they either, don't have the profile or don't really feel like they want to do law school. What advice would you give them in going to school to become paralegal if they were thinking of pursuing that path?
Yeah, absolutely. I am 100% a staunch advocate for paralegals. I think we have such a unique and important role in the Ontario justice system, and so first of all, I would say 100% if you're into it, do it. I always want to let people know, however, that there is a little bit of a struggle towards acceptance in the legal community when you're on the other side of it. It's
Mm,
very easy to get excited and kind of drink the Kool-Aid when you're in school, because you get such like this excited idea of helping people and being accessible and a little bit more cutting edge, and it can be a little bit of a bummer when you come out on the other side and you realize that your competition, being lawyers, doesn't exactly feel as excited about you as you are. But I think anyone who like paralegals, I'm speaking in a general sense, are some of the most passionate and creative and innovative people I have had the pleasure to meet.
mm,
Um, Very adaptable and just whenever the situation changes, they're willing to go for it. So if that is something that appeals to anyone, I we need more of you. So, please please come join the fight. I will happily talk to anyone that wants is thinking about going that way, because regardless of, my own struggles that I have had, I don't regret it at all, and I wouldn't change anything about that.
excellent. All right, Noelle, thanks so much.
Thank you.
You heard her. If you were interested in pursuing the paralegal path, you can hit her up in her DMs. The Twitter handle is just below her name, at Gragnola. I've been your host, Eddie Weinstein, Lawyers Who Stream. Next week, we have Carly and Zach, the co-founders of Legal Listening, and two people who we love quite a bit, and
Yes.
are just doing really awesome stuff in the legal world, disseminating knowledge over the airwaves. Looking forward to talking to them next week.
Thank you so much for having me, and sorry for delaying us a little bit.
It's all good. It's the first episode, so there had to be something that
There
happens.
had to be something,
Yeah,
right? It's just
totally.
yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you everyone who
Thank
showed
you.
up to watch, and yeah, see you next time.
Bye.